Hey guys, Rafi here from the Endgame Investor, and will be my first interview, and I'm very happy and proud to host Craig Hemke of the TF Metals Report. You might know him as Turd Ferguson or Craig Hemke. He is a wonderful commentator on the gold and silver markets, and I'm very privileged to have him here today. What I wanted to go into today was more of a personal touch. It interests me personally what brings people to the gold and silver movement, if you can really call it a movement. We're not even really a movement. We're just people who see realness, and we see it versus inflation. We see it in money. I personally see it in academia. Many aspects of life are now inflated. And, if you picture a bubble, it's not just stocks that are in bubbles. It's academia that's in a bubble. It's education that's in a bubble. And in a bubble, I mean more than just expensive and little worth, but in a bubble you see the surface of it and what the structure of it, but inside there's very little. So for example, in academia you would see an academic paper that has the structure of intellectual rigor without any of the actual intellectual rigor in it. And we see that in money. We see it everywhere in medicine, and the way people behave and their virtue signaling. The inflation is everywhere in people's behavior. It's not just money, but money is the cause of it. So just very briefly, how I got into this movement, and Craig will continue with his own story. I remember when I was very, very young, maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I found a 1,000 shekel bill in my father's drawer. The shekel was Israel's old currency. I lived in Miami back then, but my father was a rabbi, and he would take trips to Israel very often with his synagogue. So he had an old 1,000 shekel bill from like 1982 or something. And I thought that was a lot of money. So I said, how much is this worth? He's like, well, it's worthless now. So I said, how's that? And he couldn't really explain it to me. But then I remember him saying, like, I said to my father, why do prices always go up? And this was maybe a year later or something. And he said, well, that's how an economy grows. And I remember thinking to myself as a little kid, I'm like, that doesn't seem right. It doesn't make sense, because if prices always go up, then everything is eventually $1 million. And how can that work? I had this intuitive sense that you can't have a system that goes in one direction all the time, because eventually it blows up. And then I remember when I was in my mid-20s, this is around 2010, 2011. I remember I just went into, it occurred to me to look into, this might not seem related, but it is, to look into what partial birth abortion was, because it didn't sound good to me, and I just never looked into the issue. So I just Googled it, and I ended up on ronpaul.com, because he had this blog that explained what it was, and he showed these graphic pictures of it. And I remember being so disgusted about what I was seeing, and thinking, why do they have to do that? Why can't they just give the baby to someone who wants it? Why do they have to do this? And then from there, I just ended up on Ron Paul, and he was talking about inflation and all these other questions that I had as a kid that I kind of like put on the side. And then I got red pilled, and I was like, wait, he's answering all the questions I had when I was a kid that I just ignored. And the combination of looking at a partial birth abortion and the disgust that it engendered in me, and then all these questions clicking about money from what Ron Paul was saying, that just got me into Austrian economics and everything from there. So it was like a domino effect, very, very sudden. So what's your story? How did you get into this? Do you have any stories as a kid where similar to what I was saying, like something wasn't right and then something clicked when you were older?
Well, Rafi, first of all, I mean, what an honor. Thank you for having me on to be guest number one. I mean, crying out loud, thank you. That's quite an honor. And you may find, as your channel grows and your platform gets larger, and your voice gets more distributed, maybe get Ron Paul on as a guest. That'd be kind of cool, wouldn't it?
It would be very cool, yes.
That would be extremely cool. And I bet you tell him that story, that would make him, and kind of make his day. How do I answer that question? Well, one, from a personal standpoint, I've been involved in the markets and money. I always had an interest when I was a kid. I remember writing a report on the stock market when I was like 12. And, you'd watch the stock prices. They used to give them on the local news, even like local companies, and that was back when shares were quoted in eighths and quarters and halves and things like that.
Yeah.
And so that piqued my interest. And I've got family members who were in the securities industry. I had a brother who was a stockbroker. I got a brother-in-law, both of them older than me, who was a commodities broker. And it was with my brother-in-law that I first traded soybean options in 1987. And that's just basically a form of gambling. And I've always been a gambler. So I was, so you can imagine I was hooked at that point. My career then took me, I was a stockbroker for 6 or 7 years in the 1990s. And then I worked for mutual fund and insurance companies with their products. And I was kind of blinded to a great extent. I just kind of swallowed the whole financial services industry, if you will, jargon. Something gnawed at me that I knew, was mainly just salesmanship more than anything else. So I was always somewhat uncomfortable with it, but I always just kind of played along. And I was even from my whole life, from I first registered to vote in 1984 to 2008, I was a registered Republican here in the US, supply side economics, and all that kind of stuff. Then when the financial crisis hit, and I just turned 40, and a lot of different things kind of came together for me. And I got a chance to sit back and observe, like the old saying, Rafi, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, right? 2 eyes as well. So I sat back and just observed and listened for the first time in a couple of decades. And given my libertarian nature, which is maybe the second part of my answer, all of a sudden pieces started to fit together a little bit differently. I became a non-affiliated voter. I haven't been in a registered party since 2008. And the libertarian part of me started to come out. And I think and that has carried through. I've seen the falsity of the markets, of how they're propped up, how the bankers and other salesmen profit from them at everybody else's expense. And the system is really designed to transfer wealth, from lower and middle income people to, the upper income people through QE and devaluing the currency and everything else. So all of that came together, but it appealed, I guess, again, at the risk of dragging on in this monologue, what makes us unique? What qualities do you and I share with everybody else in this sector? And I think it is that kind of libertarian think for yourself quality. Even back when I was in the financial services center, you're kind of fed a line, or if you in your education, as you mentioned, people that write papers, you're fed what to think rather than not so much taught to think for yourself. But as a libertarian, you kind of think for yourself, and you find your own answers. You decide, okay, well, that's interesting, but I'm going to get some more information over here, and I'm going to decide for myself what I'm going to believe. I'm not just going to have somebody tell me what I believe. And so it's kind of in that, I think that's the common thread that most of us at least share. We're apolitical. I've got liberal beliefs, I've got conservative beliefs, if you want to put some kind of label on it.
Those are all artificial, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's through that kind of libertarian open-mindedness, find my own answers. I want to find, it doesn't mean I'm finding my own truth, but I'm not just going to take what people tell me is truth, that then leads you down this path of sound money and gold and silver and everything else. And so I monopolize your time on that answer, but I guess that's what first comes to mind.
This is another thing that I struggle with, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. We sound like doomsdayers. We sound like fire and brimstone kinds of people. But I think you would understand it when I say that at the core, I think we're all hardcore optimists. I think we are. Except it's an optimism where we know we're going to have to get through some really rough times first, but we know that this entire thing is an illusion, and when it's gone, it's going to be up to people like us to rebuild,
Right.
because we're the only
Right.
ones who really understand what's going on here. To what extent are you like excited about what's going on, the changes that you're going to see, but we really don't know exactly how they're going to happen, because there's going to be, for lack of a better term, there's going to be a real shitstorm that's going to happen here.
Right.
And
Right.
we're just we have to maintain our sanity and our optimism, but at the same time be prepared for something really bad. And we've seen bad history happen before. I mean, how do you reconcile the core optimism with which brings us to tout what we tout and do what we do, with the fear of, we know that this is going to be probably the biggest economic event in world history, and how are we going to survive it? How do you keep yourself calm in that situation?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, from that libertarian perspective, you have to be somewhat optimistic by nature, because the core tenet of that, at least for me, is that I believe that you, Rafi, are going to make your own decisions in your own best interest, and that I'm going to make decisions in my own best interest. We're going to be educated. We're going to think it through. And then collectively, as a group, as a society, if we're all educated and we've all thought it through and we all make our interest in, decisions in our own best interest, and collectively society moves in a direction that is somewhat uniform in their movement toward something positive. Unfortunately, where we stand at present, the vast majority of people are not widely educated. They don't have the time even. They might be educated and smart, but they don't have the time to learn things on their own, because they're busting their fanny, working 2 or 3 jobs, and trying to pay their bills and educate their kids and pay their mortgage and, and everything else. And so that doesn't really augur for the self-reliant part of it, because too many people have become reliant upon the state to make the decisions for them. And so that's probably my greatest concern. But, at the end of the day, as you said, you call it a storm. It's the kind of storm, you come across on the highway and you're like, well, we can either sit here and wait for the storm to pass, or we can just drive right through it, right? You can't go around it. So you got to attack the problem and go right through it. And that's kind of where you and I and so many of us are kind of waving the flag, saying, okay, I'm just going to alert and try to help as many people as I can kind of drive right through it. It's a somewhat predictable storm. I have a reasonable grasp on the whole Strauss and Howe fourth turning stuff, and that we're in that period again of change that seems to come every 60 to 80 years. And that usually you come out the other side, reinvigorated, with a new respect for self-government, and that sort of thing. So that little bit of history gives me some optimism. But again, in the world that this time is different between social media, I don't want to call it lack of education, but the type of education people have gotten, the reliance that governments and states have inspired or got from their citizens. You can see it with COVID, right? People aren't thinking for themselves. And what's the old line, about, tyranny is when people fear their government, and democracy is when the government fears the people. And we're not at that point. The government doesn't fear us. People fear the government instead. So those are the things that make me not quite so optimistic. But I can't impact that. All I can do, God's given me, for whatever reason, this microphone and this little platform that I can stand on, and the internet to shout it out to the parts of the world. I'm just going to do whatever I can to help. I'm not anticipating that I'm having some huge, massive influence. I'm just trying, if anybody does run across, TF Metals Report or discussions like I'm having with you, I just hope I'm helping more than I'm hurting.
Well, in my own activism against the health situation, or with the health situation, I'm not going to go into the details of that. I do what I can in Israel. to fight the medical inflation here. And even what you were talking about with social media, we can even see social media as like communication inflation, people pretending to talk to each other, but not really doing it,
Right.
and spending all their
Right.
time tweeting and blah, blah, blah. And on the surface communicating, but not really communicating. It's an inflation in
Right.
communication. It's all the same pattern everywhere. Um, I mean, I've found that I've influenced people that I don't even know through what I'm doing with my family, and pulling the stunts that I've pulled. And if you do some research on them, you can figure out what they are. But yeah, we don't know exactly what influence we're having, but if you influence the right person somewhere, even if you don't realize it, you'll have influence that you never realized, and that will, I guess, credit your soul if you believe in that sort of thing.
Right.
But I wanted to ask you this another question. I have this distinct memory a few years ago of Julian Assange being interviewed and being asked, what's the scariest thing of all the revelations that you've had, that you've uncovered? And he says something surprising, and I tend to agree with him. And that he said something like that everything that he saw was just such a cacophonous mess, disorganized, of this bureaucratic monster that had no head, that no central intelligence. We tend to think that there's like a conspiracy theory and there are big powerful people on top. Maybe there are. I don't really know, because I don't have this political mind to figure out who's really in charge, if there is anybody. But he said from what he saw, there is nobody in charge of anything. It's just different power centers that have no idea what the other one is doing, that are trying to vie for their own influence. And we're just caught in the middle of this war between warlords. So I come from the camp that there is really no conspiracy theory or there's no grand massive conspiracy to control the world by any single player or team, that there are just different power centers that are vying for power, and we're stuck in the middle. And I respect the other side too, because maybe they're right. I don't know. But do you feel comfortable answering, like, where do you come in on that? What do you think is going on? Is there really a plan here to control everything, or is it just a mess?
There's so many different ways there's so many different things that people attempt to control. So in some regards, yes. I do think there's kind of a loosely knit, not coordinated, but a loosely knit global cabal. That's not the right word. But of very powerful people, whether they're legitimately elected people, whether they're, bankers and CEOs that have moved up the food chain, whether people that are, whatever. And they're not like getting together, people, what's the thing? I know I'm just, my age is, I'm showing my age. What's the deal where people meet in the woods and they say that they all get together, and they like fires, and they're all this different, I can't remember what that outfit. But anyway, I don't think there's all these people getting together and planning, like 500 people that are like planning to take over the world and depopulate, and all this. I don't think that. But I think there are a lot of powerful people that have an exorbitantly high level of influence. They're all kind of rowing in the same direction. A lot of that is loosely based on their own personal goals, which mainly is to maintain their power and maintain their net worth, their money. And so you get a whole bunch of people that disproportionately have power and wealth, and they're all kind of rowing in the same direction. They can have a pretty big influence. And so I don't think it's like a global coordinated conspiracy, but I do think if you want to call it global elitism, and just the fact that they all have a shared set of priorities or goals, that it ends up dragging us a certain way. I guess I could relate this a little bit back to what I have developed in terms of my sense of the gold market. We know coming out of World War II, right? The US dollar was backed by gold. And it had to be. You had to have a currency that was backed with something so that people would have confidence in it and use it as a medium of exchange, get the global economy going again. And then by the late 50s, there's so many dollars floating around because the world was coming back that people started to convert. They wanted to convert their dollars into gold at 35 per. And the US, lost like a third of their gold reserves through that. And so then it was established, if we're going to maintain this 35 per, we got to do it through a collection of nations. That's the London Gold Pool. And that was a price management to that $35 peg, and then that fell through because so many people, so many governments wanted to convert. There's just more and more demand for dollars, more and more dollars floating around the world. I don't want to keep dollars; I'd rather have the gold. And so, where it may have been initially some form of officially sanctioned movement to manage the gold price, or even as you get into the, after the gold pool failed and the introduction of gold futures and stuff like that, maybe as my friends at GATA have long collected all the data and the cables and everything else, there was a more official, managed, approved management of the gold price. I think now it's that loose collection, to me, there are banks that make a boatload of money on the trading desks in their little department called bullion banking, and they've got a gravy train going. And so it's not so much this, global collusive thing where, the Bank of International Settlements issues the orders and the central banks carry it out, and that kind of, maybe that's it. I don't know. Maybe that is it. But I think it's more just individual banks and traders all just kind of working in their own best interest, what they think is their best interest to selfishly profit. And so again, I don't know why I'm going down that road, but I'm just thinking about in terms of, is there a wide conspiracy of all these people controlling events, or is it just small groups of individuals or an individual who is just simply acting in what they perceive their own selfish best interest? Does that make sense, Rafi? I hope that wasn't too rambling of an answer. Did it?
No, that's kind of where I fall out on it, because if there was a central plan of, there are people on the top. There's Klaus Schwab and there's Bill Gates, and I don't know exactly what they're doing. And there's Jeffrey Epstein, may he rest in wherever the hell he's resting, and Ghislaine Maxwell, and all these people that are definitely in charge of different sections of it. But I don't think there's a plan between them. I think they're just warring power centers, and we just weren't, since we weren't given the as honest hard money people, we weren't given the brains to try to even want to take over the world. We don't even know what the hell is going on, because I can't identify with it. I can't identify with anyone who's trying to take over the world, because it just seems like an exhausting prospect for me with no return. Like, why would I want to rule the world? That doesn't do anything for me.
Right. And really all we can do is just try to inspire enough people. It's like the exponential growth of a number. If there's only 8 of us, we can't get very far. But if 8 grows to 16 to 32 to 64, there's eventually you get it's like, or here's a better example, the flash mobs, right? That's now what you see in California. Rob, if you walk into some retailer and start smashing things and try to run out with a bunch of jewelry in your hands, they're probably going to come after you. But if you and 49 of your friends walk in and do it all at the same time, they're just going to throw up their hands. They've lost that battle. And that's why those flash mob crimes are so prevalent these days. If you and I try to be, lawless, and buck, the system, whether it's the financial protocols, the COVID protocols, or anything like that, we're not going to get very far. But if enough people act together in combination, then you can actually impact change. My biggest concern, getting back to being optimistic or pessimistic, I'm not sure if so much power is concentrated now into so few hands that it's a lot easier for them to potentially act collusively than to try to get enough people to overcome them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That concerns me.
Yeah. So the last thing I wanted to get your thoughts on is the prospect of hyperinflation. right? And not in
Yeah.
terms of when it's going to happen, is it going to happen, but I want to, one of the things I'm trying to do in my educational, how do you say it? My educational ambitions for people. I try to get people to think of ideas in a different way, right? So hyperinflation it's a scary word for a lot of people. It seems like they're going to lose their savings and society's going to collapse. I see it as a very different thing, because when it comes down to it, right, all the people that are controlling us, whether medically, financially, anything, socially, anything they're doing, the only reason they can do it is through the inflationary mechanism, because the government or the central bank or whatever that is financing all this can keep stealing value from the productive part of society to pay the enforcers of these regulations, whatever they are, COVID, finance, whatever, to do it. So when hyperinflation finally hits, they can't do that anymore. Inflation, they can keep inflating the money supply, but it doesn't give them any more resources. So really,
Right.
it's the final. It's not a terrible thing. It has terrible consequences, but it itself is the self-destruct mechanism on the financial system, where the people say we've had enough, and at that point they won't be able to pay the enforcers of all this stuff to keep doing what they're doing, and then they're just gonna drop what they're doing and try to live a normal life. It's going to be chaotic, but that's going to be the end of it. So, I
Right.
mean, what we're trying to do is prepare for that. And I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to every aspect of it, obviously, but I'm looking forward to seeing this entire thing just disintegrate and people come back to their senses, as if you know that remember like that scene from Temple of Doom, from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where they stick fire on Harrison Ford, and all of a sudden he regains. He's like, what just happened? Where was I? After he drank the blood of Kali, and he's like, oh my God, I'm back to myself. That's what I picture happening to millions of people. Like, what the hell have I been doing for all these
Yeah.
years?
Yeah.
That what? How do you relate to that? I mean, just
Well, I'm gonna drop a little pessimism on you then. Um, you could look at COVID and the bureaucratic, almost police state response to it as a trial run to hyperinflation and currency collapse. Because at the heart of, everybody getting vaccines every 90 days and living in fear and, still wearing, a mask, and demanding it, hey, I'm triple vaccinated and I've had COVID, but I'm going to demand everybody wear a mask because I've been made to live in fear. And why are they doing that? Because all I want to do is go back to 2019. I was comfortable, right? Everything seemed fine. So that you're made to live in fear, and you want, and you do anything just to keep your comfort level, go back to where you were, right? And so what comes out of a hyperinflationary event? And again, what is hyperinflation? Hyperinflation, basically just a loss of confidence in the currency. I mean, the inflation stems from the loss of confidence in the currency. You don't have hyperinflation and then lose confidence in the currency. You lose confidence in currency, and that's why people demand more and more of that currency, because they don't have any confidence it's going to have any value tomorrow or next week. So that's what happened, like with Weimar Germany, right? Let's just use that as an example. They slowly devalue the currency all through the 20s, and then boom, it just confidence dies, and you got the picture of the guy with the wheelbarrow. Okay, well, where did the German people turn after that, right? Did they fall back on their own self-reliance and go, oh, we can fix this? Or do they end up embracing, the madman who says, I will give you safety again. I will, make you feel good about yourself again, that sort of thing. And so that's my pessimistic view of all of this, that we've had kind of a trial run over the last year to see if people will think for themselves and go, wait a second. Like in my case, I had COVID. I know I had COVID. I had to test while I had it. Man, I was sick as stuff for a week, right? I've had 3 antibody tests ever since. I know my antibody level is higher than my wife's, who never had COVID and had the shot. So I don't need the shot, right? but I'm ostracized. I even have friends that look at me like I'm crazy because I haven't just fallen into line, right? Because I'm thinking for myself. The people are now kind of have been conditioned to, like I said, not think for themselves. This gets back to where we started the conversation, and just want safety, want some normalcy, rather than, educate themselves and then try to fix it themselves. And so that's what I guess then, being an optimistic person, an optimistic libertarian that has faith in me and faith in you and faith in people listening to us to do our own version of build back better at an individual level. They'll instead take whatever is given to them by the authoritarian, the tin pot despots around the world, and just take whatever they can get, all in the name of, what is perceived to be peace, stability, and that sort of thing. So that this little test run of the last year doesn't make me optimistic. When whatever your currency, my currency, whoever's currency fails, you get into this hyperinflation thing, the final death throes of the monetary system. That the way we've responded to COVID doesn't leave me optimistic that we'll respond to that financial crisis and come out the other end with more freedom rather than less. But hopefully I'm wrong.
I think you're wrong.
I mean, obviously, for the sake of my kids, my grandkids, for the sake of myself, I hope. But again, what can I do? What can you do? What can everybody listening to us do?
Just keep doing what we're doing.
Try to impact, but you can at least try. You try to get that exponential impact going. Go tell two people, and maybe they'll tell two people, and somehow collectively. It was only here in my country, the U.S., right? Are you a U.S. citizen, Rafi? You said you were born here?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay, so that's why I didn't want to use a pejorative of mine. In our country, the U.S., right? How many people in the 1770s, what percentage of the population actually rose up? 5% maybe? Was it even that?
Very few.
Everybody else was busy just trying to stay alive and farm and find their next meal, and all that kind of stuff. It was a very small percentage of the population that actually took it upon themselves to write the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, to found a military, to fund the military, to actually make it happen. So maybe my pessimism is misplaced. Maybe we can find, that 5% again to actually make it happen. Maybe that's a better way to look at it.
Yeah, well, I'll close with this thought, and I'm a religious thinker, so I always go back to the Bible. That's my book. So we tend to call people sheep in a pejorative sense, and there is a pejorative sense of the sheeple, and they're obedient and they're blind. But however, the Torah, the Bible, refers to the Israelites as sheep, and God as the shepherd. We see in good and bad senses. So what you're saying, only 5% rose up in the revolution in 1776. Yeah, that's about it, because we see that sheep are obedient. They worship a golden calf because somebody had a bad idea. Or they'll a few days later, or a few months later, they'll donate all their gold and silver to the tabernacle to build an amazing thing, because they're just looking for a leader that will tell them what to do. And the good thing about sheep is that they are obedient when the right people get in place. When the free thinkers get in place with the right ideas, you can take the whole herd and make them do amazing things. And we're not gonna make everybody free thinkers. It's not gonna happen. But what we can do is take the reins and become the shepherds that we're supposed to be, because we know we are free thinkers, and we know we're not all of us are right, but we've got the right idea. So if we take our role seriously, there's nobody else. It's up to us. There's nobody else.
Well said, man.
And we move the world forward. We can do this, and that's my optimistic view for the day.
That's very well stated, Rafi. I agree with you. I think that's a great metaphor for where we need to go.
Yeah. Well, it was great speaking with you. I hope this is a little bit different from what you're used to in gold and silver analysis.
Oh, it's
to
fun.
get more of the soul behind it, to understand the people in the movement. That's what I'm going for. And I'm sure we'll all talk more about gold and silver and the finance behind it for many months, many years to come. And look, have a great day, have a great life, and enjoy the world as it is as much as you can.
Thank you, Rafi. Great getting to know you. Thank you for, again, for the invitation. It's been an honor.